Now, I get asked all the time what cars I recommend buying for Turo, and the answer to that question is always the same. Low-end to mid-tier economy cars, cash cars, and heavily depreciated cars. I strongly believe that if you follow that formula, you'll set yourself up for success with Turo. But of course, there is always the question of which cars qualify for these pieces of criteria, and of those cars, which ones are actually worth buying. And so today, in this video, for possibly the first time ever, I'm going to be ranking my entire Turo fleet. And because of the fact that I have 28 cars, I'm going to have to move quite quickly. We will be doing this in an A to D rating. A is the best of the best. These are cars I would recommend buying, and they're ones that I wouldn't hesitate to buy again and are consistently top performers. B ranking are cars that are good. I think they're safe bets, solid performers, but they aren't top performers either. But they are ones that I would buy again and again and have many times over. A C ranking are cars that are solid, but from a revenue perspective or from a reliability perspective may be disappointing. And D are cars that I regret buying and would never buy them again, nor would I recommend that you buy these either. Now, when ranking my fleet, there are a few pieces of criteria that I'm really taking into account. Number one is price. How much did I buy this car for, and how much is it making on Turo? Number two is utilization. How often is this car getting booked out, and how do guests like this car? And number three, overall maintenance and cost of the vehicle. Is the car experiencing issues, and is it expensive to upkeep? And as a result of these pieces of criteria, I'm willing to bet that some of these rankings may actually surprise you. Now, again, we have a lot of ground to cover here, so there may be a few cars that I just breeze through. First is my 2008 Ford Escape, and this car is an easy A tier. This car is great. I bought this car for $4,500 and it's approaching $50,000 in cumulative revenue. It's currently nearing, I believe, 300,000 miles, and guests ask to buy this car at least twice a month. I would say that if you want to buy this car yourself, buying a 4-cylinder, not a 6-cylinder, would be recommended, as 6-cylinders do have a bit more maintenance and they're harder to maintain. But overall, I love this car and I would buy it time and time again. Next is my 2011 Ford Fiesta, which I'm going to put in a B tier, but there is a bit of a caveat here. I bought this for around $4,500 2 years ago, which at the time was a really good deal. Fiestas have in general very bad transmissions, and the only reason why I bought this one was because it was replaced right before I bought it. And this is where the caveat comes into play. This Ford Fiesta has been a great buy for us, and it's been a great performer in our fleet. But this is in large part due to the fact that it did get that transmission replaced before we bought it. And if you're looking at buying a Fiesta that has not done that work, I probably would avoid making this purchase. So for my Ford Fiesta specifically, it is a B rating, but in general, I would put most Fiestas in a C rating. Next is my 2007 Ford Focus. I had a really hard time ranking this car because on one hand, this car isn't a top performer, but this car has been such a long haul performer. It is so consistent and it has next to no issues. For these reasons, I have to rank this car an A. This is one of the first Turo cars we've ever purchased. We bought it for $2,300 and it's exceeded $40,000 in lifetime earnings. This car is not a top performer, but for the price, it is chef's kiss. I love this car. I truly think it's so reliable, and it really is the poster child of my business model, going with cheap or reliable cars that people can consistently rent. My two 2011 Focuses, I have a blue one and a white one. I used to have two white ones, but we gave one to a family member, and these go into B tier. I paid $5,000 for both of these, and both of these cars are solid performers. Now, unfortunately, the 2011 Focus was the last reliable year for the Focus, so today in 2024, the 2011 Ford Focus doesn't qualify for Turo anymore. So if you are somebody who's looking to buy a car today, I wouldn't recommend a Ford Focus because the 2012 ones just aren't nearly as good. But my two 2011 Focuses are solid, they're consistent, they're great performers. My 2012 Ford Fusion, this is a C. This car has had a lot of issues ever since we've owned it. The car spent a lot of time down for repairs. In fact, in the first 12 months we owned it, it spent about 6 months down for a PCM issue. This has left us with a bit of a bad taste in our mouth and has put us well behind where we should be profitability-wise because the PCM repair was a money suck. We bought this car for $5,700, which I think was probably a bit too high. And this is our second Fusion. Our first one had issues, which leads me to believe that Fusions as a whole probably aren't the best buy from a reliability standpoint. The only reason why this car is ranked as a C and not a D is because ever since we got the PCM replaced, it has been pretty solid. And people like to rent this car because it's very generic, it has a lot of space, it doesn't stick out, so it does perform quite well, and we would be well into profitability if it wasn't for the fact that it had costly repairs. My 2011 Honda Civic. This is a D, a hard D. I hate this car. This car has had so many issues, and truthfully, it's kind of made me dislike and lose respect for Honda as a brand. We bought this car, and the first year we owned it, it spent the majority of that time down. Similar to our Fusion, it also had a PCM issue. It took a long time to diagnose the repair and to get it fixed, and it was out for months. We got that fixed, and then a couple of months later, it had a separate issue that took a long time to repair as well. We then got that issue fixed, and then whenever we got that fixed back in December around the holidays, the The gas pedal stopped communicating with the transmission, and now the car doesn't drive properly. We've taken this car to mechanic after mechanic without any solution. We actually dropped it off at Honda this week to get a proper diagnosis, and we're officially deciding whether we want to keep it, fix it, or sell it and cut our losses. We paid $5,700 for this car, which would have worked out well had this car been a good performer, but given the fact that it has been an absolute money suck and hasn't been consistently on the platform since we bought it, this is a bad car, definitely a huge fail. Next is my 2010 Honda Fit. This is a textbook B. Everything our Honda Civic isn't, our Honda Fit is. This car has been great from a reliability standpoint. It's a consistent performer, guests like it, and we paid $5,000 for it, which in this current car market I think is a really solid deal. My 2015 Hyundai Elantra GT. We actually overpaid for this car. We bought this car for about $9,500. Some longtime followers of this channel may remember that 2 years ago I did a promotional campaign with GetAround where we listed a car on GetAround and made videos documenting the results. So we actually bought a car specifically to put on GetAround because Turo doesn't allow for you to cross-post vehicles, and due to the fact that we had a time limit of getting that car, we overpaid for it. Now, I would not hesitate buying another 2015 Hyundai Elantra GT, but I absolutely would not pay $9,500 for it. I would probably pay closer to something like $6,000 to $7,000. This car did very well on GetAround in the first year before GetAround took a nosedive, at which point we took it off GetAround and listed it on Turo. In its time on GetAround, it was making about $2,000 per month, which helped offset the expensive price tag, but on Turo it doesn't make that much. I can't give this car an A because it isn't a top performer and I think that we paid way too much for it, but I can give it a solid B. A deviation from our Turo fleet is our camper van, which is listed on Outdoorsy and RV Share. This one is a tough one to rank because there is some context that needs to be taken into account whenever it comes to this camper van. And as a result of this context, which I'll provide in a minute, if you are someone who's wanting to buy a camper van and you want to find a way to justify that purchase, then going this route is an A ranking. But if you're someone who's looking for the highest return as possible and you're purely looking at this from a business move, then I think a camper van is probably a C. This van does on average about $1,300 a month. This is an average, as some months it does $200 to $500 and some months it does $2,000 to $3,000. For example, last summer it was booked out straight from April to September, and this summer it's already been booked out through the whole summer, but winter months are very slow. And for those of you who may not have been a subscriber at this time, during COVID I bought this van to convert it and rent it out because I always wanted a camper van. The van took 2 years to complete, which was about 1.5 years behind schedule, but we did complete it within budget and it cost less than $35,000 to convert, and that included the cost of the van. The van is now paid off, and had we done this exact same conversion today, it probably would have cost closer to $50,000. We finished the van in 2022, and between 2022 and today, we've used it a total of about 8 to 9 weeks. HP and I took it and eloped and got married in Yosemite National Park in 2022. We took it to Mexico and Big Bend last year, and this past fall, we took it to the Northeast to see fall colors. I really love this van, and if you're looking for a way to justify a van purchase and you want to rent it out to make some extra income, then I think that this is a great thing that you can do. But there are $6,000 or $7,000 cars in my fleet that make more money than this van, so from an ROI perspective, it just isn't the best place to put your money. For the sake of redundancy, I'm going to clump these next few into one category. My Toyota Yaris. I have 4 Toyota Yarises in my fleet, a 2014, a 2011, a 2007, and a 2010. And these are all Bs. The Toyota Yaris is great. My only criticism of these cars is that they're very expensive. And I think from an ROI perspective, there are better investments out there. But from a reliability perspective, these cars are just bulletproof and they really couldn't be better. If you're looking for a reliable car that you can buy and really be confident that it'll work and not have any issues, and you're okay with paying a higher price for that, then the Toyota Yaris is really great. For all of our Toyota Yarises, we paid anywhere between $3,500 and $7,500 for them. Next is my 2015 Kia Rio, and this is a solid D. The Kia Rio is a textbook example of a car that we knew we shouldn't have bought, but we bought anyways. It had some major issues shortly after we purchased it, and really ever since then, I haven't loved the car. It has manual windows, but is overall a nice car, so I don't really understand why it has the manual windows. It also has tan interior. And I also think we overpaid for this car. We paid $6,500 for it in the height of COVID, and this is actually the only car that I've ever purchased where I immediately had buyer's remorse. I would not buy this car again, and truthfully, I'll probably never own a Kia again. Even though I know that technically speaking, Hyundai and Kia are the same, I've had vastly different experiences with the two brands. And to put icing on the cake, this car has been unlisted since September due to a recall. So it's currently sitting in front of my parents' house and has been for the last few months. My 2 Mazda 2s. I have a 2012 and a 2011 Mazda. The 2011 Mazda I paid $5,000 for, and the 2012 I paid $3,000. I love these cars. From an ROI perspective, these cars have been an absolute A, but they aren't a top performer, and some renters don't like these cars because they're smaller and have an odd shape. But they've been reliable, consistent performers. And I would buy another one all day long, so this is a solid B. Next Next is my Mercedes. I have two, a 2009 and a 2013. I paid $6,500 for the 2009 back in 2021 and $7,000 for the 2013 last year. The 2013 was purchased with an engine problem, and the engine problem was resolved by securing a bolt, which was a huge win and a real pleasant surprise in that vehicle purchase. Now, I don't want to jinx myself, but these two Mercedes have been absolutely bulletproof. I really like them, and my 2013 C250 is probably one of my favorite cars in my fleet. Our renters love these cars. They're consistent top performers, and they absolutely kill it. These are an easy A. I do want to offer the caveat for the Mercedes, though, to say that not all Mercedes are worth buying. Whenever you're looking to buy a Mercedes, you have to be extremely strategic on which ones you buy, because most Mercedes on the road and that are for sale today are just plain junk. To give you an idea, HP and I bought our first Mercedes in 2021, and we had been consistently looking for a second Mercedes, and we didn't make that purchase until 2023. I'm sure there were some good Mercedes that were for sale in that meantime, but they were very hard to find, which is why we didn't buy any. So be very careful about the Mercedes that you buy, because good ones are great, but bad ones are horrible. The next two I'm going to clump together because they're both unlisted for the same reason. My Hyundai Sonata Hybrid and my Hyundai Tucson. These cars have been unlisted since September for a recall that has no remedy. I would sell these cars, but these cars are both so good whenever they're listed on Turo, and they're completely paid off, that I just can't bring myself to sell them. If these cars weren't unlisted for a recall, I would rate these an easy B, if not an A. But these cars have been out since September, which is extremely frustrating, and Hyundai has a reputation of having a recall issue, so for this reason I rank them a C. My 2013 Hyundai Sonata. This car is an easy B, if not an A. It's engine blew shortly after we got it, but it was covered by Hyundai warranty, so we got a free one. And ever since then, it's been bulletproof. We even got it repainted last year. People love this car, not a top performer, but incredibly consistent, and for this reason, it's a B. My 2010 Mazda 5. This is a minivan, and it's a B. This is a great car. We bought it for $5,000. It performs great. It fills the gap of a minivan at a fraction of the cost, but I've got to admit, it is a bit ugly. But it fills a real need in my market, and for this reason, I'd buy another one tomorrow if I could. In fact, I consistently look for them, so if I found one tomorrow, I absolutely would buy it. My 2013 Mazda 3 and my 2011 Mazda 3. I think the Mazda 3 is the best bang for your buck Turo car you can buy, and for this reason, even though these cars are not a top 3 performer, though they do occasionally make it into the top 5, I rank these cars in A tier. I bought my 2011 Mazda 3 last year for $4,300, and I bought my 2013 Mazda 3 a few years ago for $5,500. These cars are great, reliable, and they're very normal cars, so everyone is okay with driving them, unlike the Mazda 2, which sometimes people get squirrely with because they have a hatchback smaller and are kind of a weird color. Next is my 2012 Scion IQ. We bought this car for $5,000 late last year, and it's one of our more recent purchases. This is an easy B. This car was a gamble because of the fact that it's so small. I was worried that the audience to rent this car would also be small, but it's been performing really great. It just got returned from an extended rental, and people who rented this car have had really positive things to say. The one thing I will say is that I wouldn't get a fleet of Scion IQs because I do think that the size and type of car that this is a bit niche. I think people will rent it, especially if it's a good price, but you shouldn't have like 10 of these. But overall, really happy with this car, and I would probably buy another one if I found one for a solid price. My 2011 Volvo S40. This is an A, and this might be a personal bias because I absolutely love this car. In fact, aside from my camper van, this is my favorite car in the fleet. We bought this car last year, funny enough, on my birthday for $5,400. This was such an impromptu buy. HP and I had just gone to eat, and we had an hour to kill before we had to be somewhere, and I was just flipping through Facebook, and I saw that this car was for sale down the street. It is in such good condition. I love the look of this car, and though we've only owned it since October, the reliability has been great, and it's just been a solid performer. I have heard of oil consumption issues and some reliability problems that Volvos can have, and I haven't really owned this car long enough to speak to that from personal experience. So with that in mind, I definitely would do research before buying a Volvo, but I will say from a guest experience perspective, guests really like this car. And last but not least is the most recent addition to my fleet, and this is a 2018 Navigator L. And this may surprise you, but this is a C. And truthfully, if you're looking for an ROI play, I would maybe even rank this a D. But we'll keep it at a C for this video. Now, if my husband watches this video, he'll be mad at me for saying this, but so far I've been disappointed with the Lincoln. Now, let me give you some context. I knew that the Lincoln would be a low utilized vehicle because of the size of the car as well as the cost. It's a niche vehicle because it's so huge. For example, if I was renting a car, I would never ever consider consider renting a Lincoln Navigator. It also is very pricey. It's priced at between $95 and $110 per day, which alienates a lot of our current customer base. But this car has been a struggle to keep rented. And while we haven't owned it for very long, so I definitely think that there's room for improvement, it definitely hasn't been performing as well as I hoped. We bought this car for a tax play. We also thought it would be nice to have access to a 3-row vehicle because it's very common for me to do things with my siblings, my nieces, and my family, at which point it makes it so much easier to have a large SUV that we can all go into. And so it made sense to buy this car knowing that it probably wouldn't be a huge moneymaker, at least from a profit standpoint. But what I am surprised about is that I knew that our net profit would be a lot lower than our other cars because of the higher expenses of this vehicle, but even our gross profit is quite a bit lower than a lot of the other cars in our fleet. In fact, as I'm recording this video, the Lincoln Navigator is the 8th best performing car in our fleet for 2024, which I know is still very early in the year, and I do expect for this to improve, but it's definitely been a bit disappointing. And especially whenever you take into account that this Lincoln Navigator, who's performing the 8th best in my fleet, costs $37,000 to purchase, while the other 7 cars that rank higher cost anywhere between $4,000 and $7,000, and adds a lot of perspective about which cars actually make money on Turo. Now, I'm glad I bought this vehicle for the reasons that I previously outlined, and my expectations for this car were relatively low, but I do strongly believe that if you're someone who's looking for the best return for your money, I wouldn't buy this type of car. And I would probably clump things like Cadillacs into this category as well, though I recognize that it does depend on where you live and who your target audience is. But again, with the Lincoln, the verdict is still out a bit because we've only owned this car for a couple of months, so I'll definitely keep you all updated. But there you guys have it, my long list ranking of all of the cars in my Turo fleet. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you some valuable insight into some of the cars that you should or maybe could consider buying. Like always, if you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.